The political preferences of Black Americans have undergone significant shifts over the centuries, reflecting changing social, economic, and political landscapes. This journey from early political affiliation to recent shifts underscores a complex and evolving relationship with American political parties. Here's a look at the history, key turning points, and modern trends shaping Black Americans' political affiliations. The Republican era 1860s to the early 20th century. In the years following the Civil War, the Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, was strongly aligned with the interests of Black Americans. After the Emancipation Proclamation and the Union victory, many African Americans, particularly in the South, aligned themselves with the Republican Party. The party supported Reconstruction and various civil rights initiatives aimed at addressing injustices faced by formerly enslaved people. This allegiance was cemented with the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery, granted citizenship, and extended voting rights to Black men, respectively. However, as Reconstruction waned in the late 1800s, so did the Republican Party's commitment to protecting Black Americans in the face of rising segregation and Jim Crow laws. Shift to the Democratic Party, the New Deal era. The Great Depression marked the next significant shift. Under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the New Deal programs of the 1930s offered hope to millions of struggling Americans, including Black Americans, who were among the hardest hit by the economic crisis. Although Roosevelt was a Democrat, many Southern Democrats, or Dixiecrats, opposed civil rights initiatives. Still, the New Deal's tangible economic benefits led many Black voters to begin viewing the Democratic Party as a source of support, marking the start of a gradual shift. World War II also played a role, as Black soldiers returned from fighting for freedom abroad, only to face continued racial discrimination at home. Their fight for civil rights gained momentum, and with it, Black Americans increasingly looked to political allies who supported equality, including emerging Democratic leaders. The Civil Rights Movement cementing Democratic allegiance. The Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 1960s solidified Black support for the Democratic Party. Leaders like President John F. Kennedy and later Lyndon B. Johnson supported key civil rights legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These landmark laws ended legal segregation and aimed to protect Black Americans' right to vote, sparking a profound shift in party allegiance. Johnson famously stated that the Civil Rights Act might cost the Democrats the South for a generation. Indeed, as many Black Americans aligned with Democrats, many white Southerners began moving toward the Republican Party, a shift that transformed American political landscapes for decades to come. The modern era shifts, nuances, and diverse political engagement. In recent decades, the Black community has continued to overwhelmingly support the Democratic Party. However, there is an increasing diversity of political thought within the community, with growing numbers of Black conservatives and independents. Several factors contribute to this evolution: social and economic policies. Some Black voters align with the Democratic Party's focus on social programs, criminal justice reform, and economic equality. Others find resonance with Republican stances on religious freedoms, business policies, and education reform. The role of younger generations. Younger Black voters are demonstrating a more nuanced and varied approach to politics, with a growing willingness to challenge traditional party loyalty. Issues like police reform, climate change, and economic opportunity resonate strongly, and younger Black voters often focus on candidates' policies rather than party affiliation alone. The influence of social movements. Movements like Black Lives Matter have emphasized police accountability, social justice, and civil rights. These issues have pushed some Black voters to critically assess political platforms, pushing both major parties to address these concerns directly. Rise of independent and third-party interest. In recent years, there has been increased interest among some Black voters in independent or third-party candidates who address issues outside the traditional two-party system. This interest reflects frustration with both parties' responsiveness and a desire for greater political accountability and representation. (2020 and beyond). A landscape of change and complexity. The 2020s have ushered in new challenges and discussions about the future of Black political engagement. High-profile elections and political figures have sparked conversations about what it means to represent the interests of Black communities, and the ongoing debates on healthcare, education, criminal justice reform, and economic opportunity remain central. While the Democratic Party still receives strong support, the political spectrum is widening as diverse voices seek representation across local, state, and national elections. A willingness to support independent candidates and influence platforms within both parties suggests that Black Americans will continue to shape American politics in unique and impactful ways, demanding responsiveness and inclusivity from any party seeking their support. A legacy of change and a future of influence. The story of Black voting patterns in the U.S. is a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the pursuit of justice. As issues and priorities continue to evolve, Black Americans are asserting a powerful role in shaping the country's political future, ensuring that their voices remain a driving force for change across the American political landscape. Throughout American history, several Black Americans have made notable bids for the U.S. presidency, challenging norms, breaking barriers, and inspiring generations. Here are some of the most significant milestones in Black presidential bids. Shirley Chisholm, a trailblazer and unbought and unbossed. Shirley Chisholm, a New York Congresswoman, became the first Black candidate for a major party's presidential nomination in 1972. She was also the first Black woman elected to Congress in 1968. Running under the slogan "Unbought and Unbossed," Chisholm's campaign aimed to give a voice to marginalized communities, particularly women and minorities. Her bid emphasized social justice, economic equality, and anti-war policies, paving the way for Black women in politics. Although she faced discrimination, limited funding, and was largely excluded by her own party, Chisholm earned 152 delegates at the Democratic National Convention, a major achievement at the time. Jesse Jackson, a civil rights leader and former aide to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., ran for the Democratic nomination in both 1984 and 1988. His campaigns were based on the principles of the Rainbow Coalition, a diverse alliance of minorities, the poor, labor groups, and LGBTQ+ individuals. Jackson's 1984 campaign received widespread support, and he became the first Black man to be a serious contender for the Democratic nomination. In 1988, he gained even more momentum, finishing in second place in the Democratic primaries, a record-breaking achievement for a Black presidential candidate. Jackson's bids highlighted issues such as racial and economic equality, voting rights, and healthcare reform, leaving a lasting impact on the Democratic Party and inspiring future Black political leaders. Alan Keyes, a conservative commentator and diplomat, launched 3 bids for the Republican nomination in 1996, 2000, and 2008. As a Black Republican, Keyes was unique in his focus on conservative values, including anti-abortion policies, limited government, and individual liberties. While Keyes did not gain significant traction or mainstream support in his campaigns, his presidential bids brought a conservative Black perspective into the national dialogue. Keyes's campaigns emphasized the diversity within Black political thought and the importance of representation across the political spectrum. Carol Moseley Braun, a former U.S. Senator from Illinois and the first Black woman to serve in the Senate, announced her candidacy for the Democratic nomination in 2004. She focused on issues like women's rights, healthcare reform, education, and economic development. While her campaign was short-lived, Braun's bid was groundbreaking for Black women in politics, following in Shirley Chisholm's footsteps. As a prominent black female politician, Braun's presence highlighted the importance of gender and racial representation in the highest levels of American politics. In 2008, Senator Barack Obama from Illinois made history as the first black candidate to secure a major party's nomination and win the presidency. Running on a platform of hope and change, Obama's campaign emphasized uniting the country, reforming healthcare, revitalizing the economy, and ending the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Obama won the election and was re-elected in 2012, serving as the first black president of the United States. His presidency is a milestone in American history, inspiring millions worldwide and encouraging increased political engagement and leadership among Black Americans and other minorities. Herman Cain, a businessman and former CEO of Godfather's Pizza, ran for the Republican nomination in 2012. Cain brought a non-traditional approach to the campaign, focusing on his 999 tax reform plan, which proposed a flat tax of 9% on business transactions, individual income, and sales. Although his campaign gained momentum early on, it ultimately ended due to controversy and a lack of sustained support. Nonetheless, Cain's campaign highlighted the increasing presence of Black conservatives in American politics and the diverse perspectives they bring. Renowned neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson ran for the Republican nomination in 2016. His campaign attracted significant support, especially among conservative and evangelical voters, due to his personal story of overcoming adversity and achieving success in the medical field. Carson's campaign focused on healthcare reform, education, and economic issues. Although he didn't secure the nomination, he played a visible role in the Republican primaries and was later appointed Secretary of Housing and Urban Development by President Donald Trump, marking another milestone for Black Republicans. In 2020, Senator Kamala Harris of California initially ran for the Democratic nomination, focusing on criminal justice reform, healthcare, and economic equity. Although she ended her campaign before the primary elections, she was selected as the running mate for Joe Biden, becoming the first Black and South Asian American woman to serve as vice president. Building on her experience as vice president, Harris ran again in 2024, this time vying directly for the presidency. Her campaign emphasized expanding healthcare access, addressing climate change, and promoting economic and racial justice. While her bid faced strong competition, Harris's continued leadership and historic candidacies represent significant progress in Black and women's representation at the highest levels of American politics. Harris's efforts in both the 2020 and 2024 races underscore her commitment to shaping an inclusive, equitable future, marking a notable moment in the journey toward greater representation and diversity in American democracy. The journey of Black Americans in presidential politics has been one of perseverance and resilience. Each candidate, from Shirley Chisholm to Kamala Harris, has built upon the legacy of their predecessors, advancing the representation of Black Americans and shaping the discourse on race, equality, and justice. Their contributions have not only altered the political landscape, but have also inspired future generations to envision and strive for even greater levels of leadership and influence. As Black political influence continues to grow, these historic bids serve as reminders of the progress made and the work that still lies ahead in achieving full representation in American democracy.